Hi everyone, this video is going to be about the GCSE Paper 2 Question 4. So this is the question where you've read two non-fiction sources and you're comparing the writer's ideas and perspectives, often the differences. It'll either say differences or similarities. The example I'm going to use for this is the sample papers of AQA. I'll put a link in the description box, but if you pause the video now and try and find the sample paper that looks like this in the link, and have a good read of this, and then have a good read of this one. Just a word of warning though, this bit here, yeah, we're not looking at that. We're looking at the second letter, which is the letter from the dad. Okay, so this will inform it, but have a good read and focus in particularly on this bit, the letter from the dad, and from the article with a picture at the top, and then restart the video. Okay, so this is the first half of the revision for this question. It's a longer question. It's worth 16 marks, and a lot of people get quite nervous about that. So this video is about planning and making sure that you can start to write secure in the knowledge that you have enough to create a good quantity of a variety of evidence, a variety of answers to show that level of consistency. But remember, you don't have to talk about hundreds and hundreds of things. They actually said in the examiner's report that they prefer it if you write about a few well-chosen examples and your writing makes sense and it has a reasonable level of depth. They would prefer that to you lightly touching on hundreds and hundreds and everything across all of the articles. So do bear that in mind. Planning is quite important. So this question, regardless of your target grade, here is what you're focusing on, AO3. Compare writers' ideas and perspectives as well as how these are conveyed across two or more texts. There's two parts to this. The first one is that you have to know what the ideas and perspectives are, and the second one is how these are conveyed. And that's just another way of saying what words and methods are there so that you can tell what the writer thinks. So this is the question. I've just copied and pasted it. For this question, you need to refer to the whole of source A together with source B, the father's letter to a family friend. So there you've got to check which bit. So it's the father's letter. Compare how the two writers convey their different attitudes to parenting and education. So you're looking for differences and you're looking things to do with parents and education. In your answer, you could. Now here it says could, but you should do this. Compare their different attitudes. You must use comparison words. So if you have an idea about one thing, you have to have an idea about the other thing. Compare the methods they use to convey their attitudes. What this means is it's keywords, structure features, structural features, language methods. So you're basically saying, how do I know they think or feel this? Okay, so that's the bit that gets quite a lot of the marking for you. Anyone can say, oh, this person likes this or this person hates this. Where you're showing your academic rigor is where you're saying, okay, I know they hate something. This quote tells me this is the method. They've done this because. And then, obviously, support your answers with references from both texts. That means both quotes, and if you're talking about structure, you might summarize a paragraph, for example. So the first step I would suggest is that you prepare a little plan. You prepare something that tells you what you're going to write. Now, I've gone for 4 things. The reason I've gone for 4 things is that it's a 16-mark question. So each of these would be getting me 4 marks. So I'd have 2 marks, 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 2 marks. Each of these is a comparison. And that way I would know that I had written enough to consistently hit all of those features on the AO3, but equally I'm not trying to write 100 things. In fact, if you only got down to say 3 or 4, but your paragraphs were really good, you would still get a strong mark. So I've already done this, but I'm going to show you my process. the first thing I look for is feelings. With perspective, there are thoughts and there are feelings. And depending on your personality, you could either start with thoughts or feelings. Now, I know from the question that I must look for different attitudes to parenting and education. So I've done one of each. I've done a thought and a feeling about each. So here's some feelings. So I looked at the two articles and I noticed that this one, in its tone, in its emotional content, is kind of jokey. Yeah? So a few months ago over dinner, Eddie announced that in English they're experimenting with food writing. I have to come up with metaphors. Give me a metaphor about this pizza, he said. I don't think I should do your homework for you, I said. He raised his eyebrows. So it's chatty, it's informal. Clearly this isn't a life or death situation. This is a dad a bit embarrassed because he couldn't think of a metaphor. If you compare it down here, the situation is altogether more severe. Now, from the other letter, although we can't mention it, we know these children are being flogged. Flogged is like really badly beaten so that your back actually bleeds. It's illegal, it's child abuse. And the father has just found out this is happening at his son's school, where his sons live. They don't even come back to him. And he needs to find something out. So the tone is going to be altogether more grave and serious. Yeah? And you've got things like the more severe words like troubling. Yeah? You've got things like ill treatment. The whole tone is coming across as, yeah, this is serious. There is a problem with my boy's school. If you will excuse the liberty, he needs to ask a favour. Yeah? I do not like the injunction laid upon them. So injunction is, that's like a severe rule. It's incredibly serious. So that struck me first. So first thing I'm going to look at is the first one is jokey. It's not about life and death. It's about a parent and son kind of bickering, having a bit of an argument, a bit of banter about their homework. The second one is deadly serious. And the source of these, it's the issues with the school. Yeah? In this one, the school, it's homework and the homework's a bit too hard. In a normal school, and the child can come back when they want. And in this one, both his sons, so I presume all his children, are living at a school where their letters are censored and they're beaten, they're physically abused. And so obviously his tone is going to be far, far more serious. Second thing, I've done school, I'm looking up here, parenting. I need a feeling about parenting. Well, there was concern in both of these, but one thing I picked up on was when I looked at this, source A, look at this end here. Who needs teachers to humiliate you when your son can do it so effectively? And up here you've got, he raised his eyebrows. You can't think of one, can you? This is what happens if you feed and educate your children. They grow up, become clever, and remorselessly take the mickey out of you. So in this one, his concern about parenting, and he's kind of concerned about him being a bit of a shabby parent, being a parent whose son has overtaken him and is going to humiliate him. And it's in a jokey way, but he's kind of, he's giving his son quite a lot of status, and he's thinking, well, yeah, my son's better at school than me. Embarrassed, I better cover that up. This one, you can definitely see that in this one, you've got a concern for his sons. He is, the first guy, he's concerned about himself. Oh, sorry. And in this one, he's concerned about his sons. It's got stuff like, particularly to see George, our other son, who is a meek boy and not so able to endure ill treatment as Henry. So, your first inference from that is that he feels that both boys are being ill-treated, but that George, from whom he has not heard, because remember, George hasn't even written him a letter, might actually be completely crushed by this ill treatment. yeah? And so what you have here is a definite contrast in who they're concerned about. In one, the child is safe, yeah, in terms of parenting, and the other one, the children are in danger. So in this one, it's embarrassment, it's less serious, and in this one, he's probably worried about what's happening to his sons. So then maybe if you've done a very emotional response, you then shift on to any particular thoughts that come out. So here you've got a kind of philosophy, a thought of it being relationship focused. So when we look at source 1, they're very chatty. There's lots of kind of jokes, kind of over here, this little conversation they have where they're chatting, and you've got this idea that the relationship is more important than school. And you even know this because he actually says, I'm not academic, and he moans about school. He moans about school up here. He's not really that pro school. He's like, I'm not academic, I'm not bothered, my son is, I feel a bit embarrassed. In this one, he very much is. If you're looking at this, it's relationship focused, academic focused. His sons are being beaten. Now, most parents you'd expect straight away just to be talking about, okay, I'm really worried because their teacher is clearly a psychopath. But here, before he talks about the really weird behaviour here, he talks about the fact that their literacy hasn't got better at school. And yes, that would be a concern. Yeah, he's sending the children off to school. But in terms of what you would expect him to be really, really focused on this bit. The fact that the teachers are sort of abusive and there are allegations of starvation and beating. And yet he's first of all worried about the quality of the learning. It's almost like saying, well, if the teachers were really horrible but they were learning to spell new words, that would be okay. Whereas you can't see the first writer even thinking that. He's not even worried about the words. And then finally, if we look at this one, so I've covered a bit about school. I want to go to parenting. Now, look, I've thought about school, parenting. Why? Because parenting, education. I'm looking at both of those things. And so here, if we're looking at the attitudes in parenting, you've got a very different philosophy. So this first one, all the way through, his son can embarrass him and can joke, and they have little battles. Look, does it need saying that my biggest miscalculation was to take on Eddie over maths? He doesn't labour the point, but he's irritatingly good at it. In terms of their relationship, they're kind of playing games together, and there's a jokey tone between them. They're very familiar, and you've got the structural fact that they do not have to write to each other because they live in the same house. And you could talk about the structural fact here that he is far more distant. He's far more distant. In fact, he's not even writing directly to his son. He's writing to a friend to investigate. And so you've got the fact there's a letter. The letter needs to be written because he cannot verbally ask his sons, which is evidence in the structure of what he's done, that he is physically distant from his sons. He doesn't seem to want to visit and discuss it with them directly. He's talking here about how he thinks that his friend is trusted by the boys, but it's a distance, not only to send your sons to boarding school, but when you find out they're being starved and beaten, you send someone else to investigate. So in the structure of that, the fact that it's almost like an investigation, because you've got stuff like this stuff, see them and ascertain whether you think it would be advisable for me to send them home. I will be guided by what you say. It's like he's hiring an investigator. So there's definitely those differences. Okay, in the next video, what we're going to look at is turning this plan into some paragraphs. But I hope that's helped you kind of with the kind of things you could write about. and see you in the next video.